Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, Miss Lasha Glennie. How you doing, Lasha?
Great. How are you?
I am fabulous. We've already done our mandatory weather chat off air, so we don't need to do that. And I think it's more relevant this morning because you're calling in or you're jumping on the line with me from Winnipeg. And I think that if I remember back, you reached out because I'd done an episode with a tech startup from your community from a couple of years ago, and you boldly and effectively reached out and said, Tyler, there's a few things I want to clarify. There's a few things going on here at Economic Development Winnipeg and in our city and in our part of the world that you should know about. So thank you for that. And I will turn the mic, I'll turn it over to you to do a quick introduction. What's your role at Economic Development? And let's unpack. I've got so many questions. I'm so curious to chat with you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like one of my main jobs as being the business development manager over here is going up against Winnipeg's reputation all the time.
Okay.
Some things correct, some things not. My portfolio specifically spans tech, finance, and creative industries. So I feel like I know a little bit about a lot of different things.
What is it? 1 inch, 5 miles wide and 1 inch deep. I think sometimes I feel that way as a podcast host. I'm like, people are like, oh, you must know so much. I'm like, well, I know a little bit about a lot. So it's a tricky balance. How long have you been in the role?
It's been a little over a year now, but I've been in the tech community. Oh man, when I say a decade, I should just keep saying 10 years. It doesn't sound as ominous, but been in the tech community for 10 years now, in various roles with cybersecurity, AI and agriculture, traditional ICT, all those the sectors, I guess you could say.
And you made the joke, so we're gonna pick on it a little bit. What is the reputation that you come up against the most? Because I don't want to jump to any conclusions on that one. It's very dangerous territory here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost that Winnipeg, is this small little blip of a city in Canada. But I would have to say you don't necessarily need 1 million people to grow $1 billion company. And you can see that in several of the startups or the legacy companies that are here. But we just do have a storytelling problem. And, like any other city, Winnipeg has some gaps that we're constantly addressing. But at the same time, it does have tons of really cool, innovative companies and projects for people to come and work on.
I've often heard, again, speaking from the outside, oh, Winnipeg, well, don't go to Winnipeg in the winter, it's cold, and oh, in the corner of such and such, it's always windy, and like those are the things I hear. When I talk to some of my friends more in the financial space, they're like, Winnipeg, it's a lot more steady. You don't have the crazy roller coaster that Calgary gets with its boom and bust cycles. You don't get that in Winnipeg. And I've heard things that, weren't positive or negative. They were just like, oh, it's different, but different in some of these ways, which depending the ups and downs of the Calgary economy, which I've lived here for 25 years, that's got its pluses and it's definitely got its minuses. So maybe a little level of consistency, but I'm assuming like anywhere, you say, I am curious to unpack tech, finance, creative industry. Tech kind of underpins all of that too, doesn't it, to a certain extent? Like it's hard to say one is an industry versus an influencer of all things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we either tech or we tech enabled, so it's the difference.
Yeah, well, kind of. So break those down for me from a specific, from that being your portfolio. Is it pretty evenly weighted? And, even understanding the creative industries, and you mentioned gaming, and then there's obviously the film industry in Canada is huge because of the impact from our south of the border, which is, we're recording this the day after Trump's, one of his meandering tariff announcements. So maybe we'll be cautious to not wade into any of that territory because who actually knows? So when it comes to your portfolio, is that pretty much equal, or like does tech take up more of it because of the tech enablement aspect?
Yeah, tech definitely does take up more of it. And I mean, like we just said, tech can be in almost everything. So when I look at finance, yes, we do have all the major banks situated here with pretty great regional offices. It's kind of, their gateway to the West, and there's a really great talent pool here, whether you're in traditional banking, insurance, that kind of thing. But then encompassing also fintech gets rolled into that as well. And then on the creative industry side, we really focus on what we're strong in and what we have a strong tax credit in. So thinking video games, animation, visual effects, and that kind of thing, virtual production as well.
I appreciate you made the comment about tax credit of kind of often, follow the incentives or, follow, what gets measured gets done to a certain extent. How is that the Manitoba environment from a tax, like how favorable is it for startups and companies looking to reduce friction or make things easier for themselves to get going?
For sure. I mean, I think one of the greatest aspects, even just aside from tax credits, is that you can have an incredibly low burn rate here just because everything's so affordable. Like we
Okay.
have startup founders that own houses. I don't
What? That's
think
great.
that's any.
That's crazy talk. That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on what sector you're really looking to focus on. I mean, we really pull above our weight in several different sectors, and that's why we have that stability that's here. But when you're looking at specific tax credits, video gaming and anything interactive,
Mhm.
wonderful. You get 40% for that tax credit. If you're looking for investment and you have a Manitoba investor, we have a small business venture tax credit that gives you back 45%.
I've had people come on and talk about that. That actually works. That vehicle and that mechanism works incredibly well. Mhm.
Yeah, and we would love to extend it. So recently, we put together with Skip a wonderful tech roundtable that encompassed some of the scale-up tech company leaders, the legacy companies that have been here for 25 plus years, with two of the more prominent ministers that get to contribute their voice in their mandate to the tech community. So
Okay.
Minister Jamie Moses, Minister Mike Morose, who's the newly minted Minister of Innovation, was there. And they're just so open and welcoming to hearing what the community has to say and to learning. So on that tax credit specifically, it would be wonderful if we could push it forward to include more groups like Startup TNT. If you invest in that, you're unfortunately not eligible for the tax
Okay.
credit right now.
Yeah.
We also have Trillic Ventures that just started, so Manitoba's first venture capital fund that's actually located here.
You beat me to one of my next questions. Okay, right on. That's great. I'm like, where
Yeah, so
is the money coming from inside the walls, right?
slowly but surely, yeah, we don't have the capacity right now that Calgary has, but it's a great blueprint, I think, that we would like to replicate here.
And do you have the same, like obviously Calgary's got a high degree of family offices and potential angel investors, and you've got that, which is often so critical in those early stages when you need that venture money. You need those you need those first checks. Clearly Alberta's had a lot of wealth generated through the energy markets and, not necessarily understanding. I'm assuming you've got those same pockets of wealth that have been accumulated over time in Winnipeg, specifically Manitoba as well.
We do. It takes a little bit more education, though, on the tech side of things,
Okay.
because the stability is let's go and invest in real estate, or let's go and invest in such and
The
such.
tried
And
and
what they
trues,
know.
right? The tried and trues. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from a lot of the people I know in Alberta, there's money, but there still is that. And I think it's getting better. But even a few years ago when I started the podcast, there was a lot of like, well, we've got potential investors, but they don't know. They're not comfortable. They're way more comfortable drilling a hole in the ground, which is also inherently risky, but they're comfortable with that risk.
Yes. Yeah, if they understand it, and if that's their past industry, then absolutely.
Well, that is the dialogue with risk. Well, you're not eliminating risk. It's just how comfortable you are with it. How do you
Yes.
understand it? Can you unpack it? And if it's a brand new, net new, it inherently just feels more risky.
Yeah.
So you've got some money, you've got government behind it. You mentioned there's talent there. You mentioned that there's a solid pool. Like thinking about all the things that are required, like it's well, we need money, but we also need ideas. And then we also need customers. So when it talks about talent pool, how closely is your tech ecosystem or all those industries? I don't want to just call it tech and use a blanket statement. How close is that integrated into academia and like who's pushing out the talent and how's that side of the equation being balanced in Winnipeg?
Yeah, we have some great talent that's exiting. We have two universities, University of Manitoba, University of Winnipeg, especially with the computer science program
Okay.
and some of the co-op placements that happen afterwards. That's been absolutely fantastic. Red River College Polytechnic is creating new programs all the time, and they have a really great talent pool that comes out of there. And then there's also the Manitoba Institute of Trades and Technology as well. And they have some really unique programs where they're pairing with, like the program PTech pairs with Pembina Trails Early College. And so you have some students that are going into software development or cybersecurity starting in grade 9. Well, when I was in grade 9, 10, 11, etc., I was so hyper focused on what I was doing that I was almost an expert in specific things by the time that I was done high school. So that's what they're kind of
Oh,
looking
that's
to
interesting.
do.
Oh, cool.
And then once you've graduated, you're already done 1 year of your 2-year diploma. And then, especially when it comes to things like cybersecurity, if you want to go on to do penetration testing and all these other smaller certifications, that's really going to upskill you. You're already ahead of the curve.
Oh, that's interesting. I appreciate it. No, I didn't. That's why we have these conversations. I didn't know that. From a talent pool perspective, I know I'm thinking of some of Calgary's challenges that I've run into over the years talking to people, and we seem to have less of the brain drain conversation happening now. Where 4 or 5 years ago that was a big issue. It's like, oh, I don't want to work in energy, so therefore I have to leave. And obviously, there's been people kind of repatriated and came back to Calgary. And I've also heard wow, geez, it's hard to attract talent when you're pointing them at this job, but they're not sure what their next 2 jobs from now will be. Kind of thinking about how that cycle works. How have you seen that work kind of for Winnipeg, being that, it's a smaller market and you're probably going through some of the things that we went through a few years ago and probably are still going through?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of twofold. So there are the people that leave for other opportunities. I find that Winnipeggers always come home. It's that family pull, but also now it's the quality of life pull. So as a single person, would I want to move out to Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Then you end up meeting someone inevitably. Maybe you start a family. Well, do I want to be paying 200 or $2 million for a 500 square foot
For
condo?
my starter home in Vancouver. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
I
It
think
just doesn't make any
Calgary's won on
sense.
that attraction side a little bit too, as I've heard people
Yeah,
like, yeah, it was great until I decided to start a family, and then I moved back because it wasn't serviceable, and like
yeah,
life logistics are real.
absolutely. And you know what? It takes a village. Honestly, if your village is in Winnipeg, it makes sense. And I think that's kind of what ended up getting us in the Global Mail as the number one place in Canada to raise families. And that
Mm.
community has really grown here with lots of different supports and things to do. And on that side, on the talent side of things, yes, there might not be 10 different companies necessarily that you would jump to. But that leads to really loyal retention and having an
Which is
HR
ideal. I think
background as
that's ideal
well.
for sure. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, there is a cost acquisition with talent. You're not necessarily going to have your talent poached, you know, 5 different times before you can find the right person that's going to stick in the role for a while.
Which is fair. I appreciate it. What is it? I apologize my ignorance. What is the population of Winnipeg?
If you're looking at metro region, I believe we're around 850,000 right
Okay.
now.
And I know Calgary, we've had some crazy growth the last couple of years, which has contributed to some pluses and some minuses, depending on how you want to look at what side of that equation. Obviously, access to housing and just pure civil infrastructure can't keep up. What's the growth curve look like in Winnipeg?
You know what? I don't necessarily, I'm not the expert
I apologize.
on
You're
that.
becoming the
Yeah.
expert on all things Winnipeg to me right now. So I realized as I asked that question, I'm like, how you might be drifting outside of her area of expertise. I apologize. Um, I also own Google. I can go check it out as well. I was curious because thinking about all the things that contribute, and also so many conversations I've had as Calgary has not far from arrived, but it's in a very different place than it was 5 years ago when I started the show, and where, I guess curiosity. And I was at a Calgary Economic Development event yesterday and talking about, we're still bad at collaborating with each other cross sectors. How would you respond to that in terms of when you look at even across your portfolio that at face value look very different, but yet the opportunity interaction based on tech enablement and people moving around? How is the cross collaboration? Do you see that as a strength, or what's your perspective on that in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I see that as a really big strength, mostly because of our size lends itself to one degree of separation, really, of who you might want to talk to. And then being able to build up your company to a point that if you want a kind of visibility locally, it's not a problem to get it. And
Mm.
you're kind of seen as the hero of that sector. Which some people really like, other people doesn't matter to them. But if you want that opportunity, it is there.
Yeah, it's the big small, like, Calgary, as I've often referred to it as a big small town, having grown up in a small town. I would assume Winnipeg very much fits that, probably the same bill. Like it literally is 1 degree. Everybody knows
Yeah, and
everybody.
everyone's just so willing to help and have conversations and, being able to make those connections. That's something that I absolutely love to do with my job. And the city just lends itself to making that really easy.
Which I Those are the difference makers, especially in those early days. Well, I think always, actually, that never really goes away. But the early days where everything you feel behind the eight ball and everything is a lift, when you can make it a little bit easier, or one introduction opens up five doors, that definitely helps. In your role as business development manager, explain to me a little bit your role. Like, is it more attracting from the outside? Is it making sure that the ecosystem is interacting with each other and has what they need? Just really understanding, because the title is easy to jump to think what it means. I'd love to get your definition of kind of what keeps you busy on a random Wednesday. If I was going to pick
Yeah, for sure. My days look different every single day. Sometimes I'm doing a podcast, other days, I'm at an event, etc. But mainly I'm focused on the companies that are already in Winnipeg and
Okay.
helping them expand and grow. So there's several projects that, are off the side of my desk that helps the ecosystem. And then beyond that, national attraction as well. So if there's a company that wants to get started in Winnipeg or to open up an office in Winnipeg, I'm here to white glove handheld service. Like, let's get you
Okay.
situated and successful.
Well, if you think about your last couple, and I'm not looking for specifics, but generalities at the same time. If you think about the last couple companies that you would have dealt with that just said, yeah, we're going to move to Winnipeg. What was the decision? Where did they come from? Just give me an idea of just really understanding like kind of what makes that an attractive value proposition for a company. Because picking up and moving somewhere, there's a lot goes into a decision like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that doesn't happen as often as opening up a second office
Oh,
necessarily.
okay. Okay.
But there have been some that have completely picked up and moved, and that's more seen right now in our creative industries,
Interesting.
video game studios, especially the medium. I consider them the medium-sized ones, looking at like 10 to 50 employees. The tax credit just really makes them more
The right incentive.
nimble. Yeah, because I mean, they're really working on project to project. So anything that helps them bridge those gaps. And there's been a lot of tax credit changes in interactive digital media. Don't want to call out Alberta getting rid
I
of things,
know,
but
I
that
know. I knew where
happened.
you were going. That's okay. It's fair. It is what it is. I knew
Yeah,
exactly what you.
in
I
Quebec
felt
as
where that
well.
was going for sure. Your blatant sales pitches and overt value proposition shares are totally okay on here. It's all right.
Fantastic.
Don't hold and I appreciate that. Like, what are the incentives to get? And obviously, like similar to Calgary, if you're comparing to other markets, there is a lower cost of living. There's a lot of things but those are all sometimes secondary. If you got to look at what's going to be the most valuable for this business venture, and why would I pick up and make that effort, and how's that going to benefit me in a stable way for the next couple of years? Mhm.
Yeah, and a lot of the SaaS and the ICT companies, for the most part, their customers are not necessarily the first ones. Their first customers are in Canada
Yeah.
anyway, so they don't necessarily need to be situated in any specific province to get that done.
Mm. Talk to me about that, because that's such a challenge. And I've talked to a lot of startups here. Like, how many clients do you have in Calgary? Alberta, Canada, US. Okay, now boom, or Europe. And those are interesting conversations. But that's no easy feat, getting access to other markets like that, especially when you're not there or don't have the relationships. So obviously, that sounds like that's part of your role. What's some of the playbook around that when you're sitting with a company going, okay, we're going to look at XYZ market? Could be south of the border, could be globally. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where some of the collaboration and mentorship might come from companies that have already done it and are
Oh,
able to
nice.
open
Okay.
those doors and do those introductions. Then, we kind of sit on the laurels of being Canadian as well. And it's a great brand, honestly. And so being
It's
able
kind
to
of
tap
safe. It's
into,
trustable. It's reliable. We
yeah,
we say please a lot. Yeah, no, it's good.
yeah, for sure. And being able to tap into things that are more global, like the Trade Commissioner Service,
Okay.
and having those offices all over the world, and the accelerator programs that they have as well, those have been really, really useful.
Okay, that makes sense. It's just such we're going to expand into a new market. Okay, that's easy to say. It's hard to follow through. And when you're in a smaller market like Alberta or even like Manitoba, you need to, like, for a lot of the companies and a lot of the services that they offer, there just either isn't a client or just not the client at the right cycle, for sure, for a lot of these emerging technologies. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's where, the interprovincial, not just the actual trade barriers that there have been, but
Yeah.
even the, perceived dotted line that's between each of the provinces, that's where you need to come together as the prairies and use the strength in the three provinces coming together to, Calgary helping Winnipeg, Winnipeg helping Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, just kind of leverage and build each other up as well.
Do you see that happening kind of at the level of the startup founders and the individuals that are doing the thing? Are they quick, or is it easy for them to build relationships in some of those? Because like take politics and like you said, some of the imaginary layers aside, one founder talking to another founder, they're all going through the same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that interprovincially that could be better, for sure.
Okay. Okay. So hey, let's do our. I always love to be optimistic and positive, and at the same time, what's holding us back. So some imaginary but still real interprovincial barriers. I heard loud and clear as one of those things that if that was different, it could be better.
Mhm.
Anything else kind of on your list of? I always like if we had a magic wand and we could move a few things just off the board completely. What would you magic wand?
I think specifically for us, we are getting traction with some of the earlier stage funding. We
Okay.
also have the Manitoba First Fund, and it's basically a fund of funds. So they're looking
Mm,
to put money into venture capital groups that would then look to do a large percentage would then have to go back into Manitoban
okay.
companies. There's definitely some barriers to that. I think that program, and this is just my own opinion, may or may not um, focus on some of the wrong things. Like
Okay.
you have to have a person that's based in Manitoba with an office. I think that makes sense. But to lose out on having a collaboration with one of the BC offices because you want to move that specific stipulation, that
Yeah,
has made it
might be too
harder.
many rules for the size of where your market's at now. It might be an ideal state,
Exactly.
but it might not be where it is. If I'm hearing you,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah, exactly. And they've put money into some of the VCs that are looking to do, Series A and higher.
Hmm.
Below that right now, aside from Tallgrass, which is also sector specific with
Hmm.
ag,
Yep.
there hasn't really been a fit that's been found. So I mean, many, many, many. If you could fill those gaps, that would be ideal. Magic wand for
I
sure.
appreciate the work that the team from Tallgrass. I just had breakfast with one of their
Mhm.
founders before this podcast. Funny enough, actually.
Yeah, great team.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
Marliese, she's originally from Manitoba,
She's a rock
so
star. I'm a big
yeah.
fan of Marlies. Yeah, and Wilson and Chris. Yeah, and I love what they're doing. And they don't look at the world with borders at all. They're looking at everything. Because I do love how sector specific they are
Yeah.
and geographically open minded they are,
Well,
which I
and
think
I
is really,
mean,
really so.
where do we punch above our weight? Agriculture, for
100.
sure.
Yes, play to your strengths.
Yes.
Yes, we spend so much time focusing on our weaknesses, but in a situation like this, playing to our strength is so key. So potentially some other opportunities, and sounds like us being Alberta, more people playing in that early stage, like writing those smaller checks.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one, and I think it's also just the age and the maturity of our environments, because maybe we're a few years down the road or differently than you guys, but it's all the same comments that I'm hearing when I talk to founders. It's like, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of money out there, but I'm not getting any of it, or I'm not getting the right kind with the right supports, because a check is a check, but a network, somebody who can introduce you, someone who's got, I've been here and I can offer advice. Like I know there's a lot more value than just a check.
Yeah, and if we could have a few more anchor companies like Skip, and I think we
Mm-hmm.
are on the verge of that in the next few years. I think
Okay,
there's going
because
to
if you
be
can point
some
to
great
things, that makes it a lot
exits.
easier, and your job gets way easier, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the spin-offs that have even come from, ex-Skip employers or ex-Neo employees, because they have quite a big team that's in office here as well. Once you get that momentum going, not just for early stage investment checks, but also for ideas and mid and senior level talent, that's really great for the ecosystem too.
Yeah, to getting that person, to getting those team members who have a little bit more of that experience.
Yeah.
How does Winnipeg lay out in terms of like innovation hubs, or like those places where innovation can really bang into each other? And I know that's something Calgary's got a lot better at in the past handful of years. Is there some really clear, again, when you're a local, you kind of just know those places, but you're not, you don't. What can we point to for anybody who's like, yeah, if you want to bump into and be with where the things are happening, go here. I'm assuming you guys
Yeah.
have a few of those. Mm.
Yeah, we do. I would say pretty grassroots. There's two, three that I would probably point out. One's more for general entrepreneurs, so the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship at the U of M. And then also at the U of M, they have Idea Start that was started with Mo Levy. That program, I would say, can really take off once they figure out their IP issues, because it is connected to the university, and that's, a whole other
I've had
topic.
conversations about those that as well, and sometimes the university does certain things well, and maybe some other things not well, and it gets messy.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit too much red tape on that one. And then there's
Okay.
also idea miners, which basically anybody with an idea that wants to meet with like-minded individuals. That's really, ground level. There's a spot for them too. Next step up from there, if you kind of know your business and what you want to get started, but still need some supports, kind of more of an incubator type thing. You have the programs at North Forged Technology Exchange. You also have Tiny Bison, which is pretty casual. They meet up every Wednesday. They have some ex-founders there that provide some really great advice and support and connections. And then from there, I would say, so we just had Tech Manitoba, which is one organization, and Manitoba Technology Accelerator merged together, which was really exciting to play to both of their strengths and make those connections stronger. They're now called Manitoba Innovates, and they have a physical space. So I believe right now, I want to say like 10 to 15 startups are in that space.
Okay.
And that's great, all working together, bantering ideas off of each other, supports for problem solving. That's kind of the hub there to be able to find like-minded individuals. If you don't necessarily want to come in and have a workspace, then I would say go to Tech Thursday. And, every Thursday, casual panel, free to get in. You can find angels, devs, marketing folks. It's such a wide assortment of people and super well attended.
I was going to ask what your attendance, because I've spoken at and been attended Tech Thursdays in Calgary a bunch of times, and I'm always shocked how many people will brave sometimes the -30, and you still got 200 people in the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I go, okay, there's a bunch of startups over there. Who is it? Is it 20-year-olds? Is it people that are like later in their career, like mid-career changes? Who are you seeing? Like, what is there a profile, or is it really a mixed bag?
Such a mixed bag. And what I like about that is that they're really going after problems that need to be solved. And so, you could have the 20-year-olds, starting up something that they found to be a problem going through post-secondary, or you could have the 50-year-old doctor who's like, well, why is there no platform to call in digitally to speak to someone when I have just need to fill a prescription or whatever the case may be. So wide assortment, and they've just had great life experience so far.
I've always been pleasantly excited or surprised about just the sheer diversity, because it's often easy to, obviously as Hollywood portrays the startup founder being a certain gender and age, like all the things, but it's not like that at all. Actually, when you go and hang out at Platform or wherever you are, and you're like, oh, there's a real mix of people here, and a lot of people with a lot of experience under their belts, technically in certain fields, highly technical, but never often been entrepreneurs or founders, which is such a sexier proposition than it was even not that many years ago.
For sure. And I think that there's a lot of non-technical founders too that I've been seeing come out because they've identified the problem, and then they need to find someone that can help them, build out that back end. I would say still lagging behind though, and for various issues, this could be a whole other topic, is female-led founders.
Okay. Yeah. Because a good friend of mine, she works at the 51 here in Alberta, and she's the director of the Movement 51, which is their education arm. I think she was just in Winnipeg actually recently.
Yeah, I got to meet her. She's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys know each other actually. I was hanging out with her yesterday. We were chatting about it, and she gets so excited about who she sees coming in the room to get educated and to become more aware of whether to be a female founder or to be an early stage investor from a female perspective. And I know we've got a pretty strong movement of that in Alberta. Again, still has a long way to go. Let's be clear. Celebrating the optimism while also knowing there's still a lot of roadblocks. Let's not kid ourselves.
For sure.
And I think statistically, Alberta does punch a little bit above. This isn't us above you. I'm gonna be careful how I'm about to say this. I think we do punch above our weight from a female founder startup perspective, which I always thought is a stat we should celebrate more often.
Yeah,
because if you can see it, you can believe it. But if you don't see it, well, it doesn't exist. So you got to put those things out there. How did you get it? It sounds like you got into tech yourself, like early, like at high school.
Um, Not so much. I
Okay.
feel like I really beelined my way into the role that I have right now.
I love
Um,
everything about that actually.
Yeah, I mean, origin stories started with a degree in psychology to a floundering of, okay, what do I do with this now? To thinking I wanted to be a teacher. Mad respect for all teachers out there. That was not for me, but that's what took me to University of Alberta. So I have had some experience living in
Oh,
Alberta and Edmonton
yep.
for a period of time. And then when I came back, I actually got headhunted for a job for Tech Manitoba, running an international project called Tech West.
Okay.
And we would help Western Canadian tech SMEs really maximize their ROI going to big international events like Mobile World Congress in Barcelona
Oh, very
or
cool. That's
CES in
interesting.
Las Vegas. Yeah, it was great. And it was super successful too. We helped, I think, 250 companies raise $300 million in either sales, investment, partnership, whatever the case may be. But then COVID happened,
Ugh,
and just like that classic
yeah.
Homer Simpson meme, just like went back into the
So many
bushes.
stories start with so COVID happened, and then
Hmm. Exactly.
if I'm going to attend, if I'm a startup, and I've got my product and I know who my customer is, and I'm going to go attend one of these big events, what's a little bit of the playlist? You know, what's the okay? These are the three things you need to do if you're going to any event because it's a huge amount of time, it's a huge amount of expense, especially if it's international. How do I get the most bang for my buck? What would be your to do list?
Yeah, I mean, try to be as proactive in pre-scheduling meetings
Nice.
as possible and be creative about it. I mean, it's harder when there is a show, let's say like Website in Vancouver, because there's castle law and you can only give out so much information. Whereas,
Canada
you know,
has different levels, yeah, for sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you go into the States and it's like, well, here's my phone number, my parents' phone number, my email
It's
address.
the wild west when it comes to privacy.
Exactly, exactly. So you just have to be creative about it. I mean, yes, it takes a little bit more time, but you show, okay, there's X person is going to be there. Look them up on LinkedIn, try to connect that way, and as many pre-scheduled meetings as possible because there's some magic that happens on the show floor, but it's not guaranteed, and it's not necessarily going to be serendipitous as it looks.
Yeah.
So just try to
Nice.
be prepared. And then honestly, on the practical side, make sure you bring sneakers. Don't try to have fancy footwear. You're going to be walking like 20,000 steps a day. Don't try to be a hero on that
Break
end.
trade shows are exhausting.
Yes, yeah.
What about speaking at the event or getting any type of exposure? And that's something I've
Mhm.
done in the past. And I'm like, oh, it's almost if I can't speak or at least have some type of showcase, it almost felt like it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think looking into the speaking engagements is really great as well. Um, Also, if you can collaborate on a booth
Mm,
with a
okay.
customer, that's also a really great use of time usually. Having one on your own
I
is
like
is
that.
such a big pull. I mean, there are programs out there that will help with those costs. So there's Can Export for just creative companies as
Okay.
well, which a lot of people aren't aware of. And then in Manitoba, we have the export development support. So, that'll help cover, 30 to 50% of your costs as well. So if that is a barrier, that can assist, but otherwise, it's time and people resources.
Yeah, no, just doing a show in your own city is tough enough, let alone on the other side of the world, where
Yeah.
everything. And talk to me. One of my pet peeves. I'll lead my question with that. Was oh, we did a trade show and nothing came of it. I'm like, well, what was your follow up strategy? Well, we didn't do anything. Someone has a bag. Someone has a Ziploc bag full of business cards somewhere in someone's desk, and no one did anything with it. I do see that more often than I would. Being in marketing, we've had a lot of conversations. Oh, trade shows don't work. I'm like, well, explain to me what you did. I'm like, well, let's just say maybe how you did it didn't work.
Hmm.
So talk to me about the how important it is to try to capitalize on that investment even after the fact.
Oh, yeah. Follow up is very, very
It seems
important.
obvious. It seems obvious to say it
It
out loud.
seems so obvious that I didn't mention it, but I mean, that's all part of relationship building, and that's why you're there to do it in person. I mean, COVID showed us that we were able to do lots of things remotely, and that's great, and we can accelerate things now. But at the end of the day, a deal is always going to be done with a smile and a handshake, in my opinion.
Yes. So sooner or later, there's a relationship or a human interaction. I couldn't agree. And I would argue that maybe in the world of technology, the ones that are still good at that, actually, it's becoming a differentiator.
Yeah,
Oh, I wrote you
absolutely.
an email on ChatGPT. I'm like, sure. So did everybody else, right? I think that's handy for grammar and typos and tone. And yet it still requires, we're still, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, we're still humans having an interaction. Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You can tell me to park it if I want to, but I'm a company in Calgary. I'm in a startup phase. I've got my product. I've maybe had a little bit of funding, angels, family, but I'm ready to set up shop. Give me the sales pitch. Why would I move to Winnipeg? And maybe I didn't give you enough information either.
Well, yeah, I'd probably ask a couple of more
Well, ask me a couple questions.
questions.
Let's
Yeah.
do a quick role play here, as long as you're okay to play along, because I'm totally putting you on the spot right now.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I think that I would ask more on the personal side of things, like, is it just yourself? Are you needing to relocate a partner, a family? Do you
Yeah, there's
know
only a
anybody
couple
in
of us. We're
Winnipeg?
super highly mobile. We're single. We don't have any, we don't have family. Our families are already somewhere else. We ended up in Calgary, we went to school here, and that's just where we were. But before we really lean in, we want to make sure we're putting our roots down in the right place.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking to build a really loyal but talented workforce, there is, especially with developers, there is just a ton of great staff that you could have here. The the cost of that staff is going to be lower. And if you want space, which honestly a lot of tech companies are drifting back to,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the midst of launching new products and features. If you need to war room, it's a lot easier to do that in person instead of over various time zones. However, we do understand that not necessarily all your talent might be located in one place, and that's still fine, and that's where the central time zone comes in.
Nice.
So, a couple of hours here and there isn't going to make or break you. But being able to have all of those cost savings on your space, on uh, on your staff, on any kind of bills is really going to be able to extend out your revenue as well. So you could do that stable, low burn and low churn rate here in Winnipeg. And plus, Winnipeg's just a really fun city. If it depends what you're into, but great music scene, arts, culture, restaurants are phenomenal. I'm a huge foodie myself. And at the end of the day, if you're putting down roots and be able to have a stable, nice place to live, vibrant city, Winnipeg would be, a great choice. And being able to come in and use all of those extended tax credits, the Innovation Growth Fund, the export development support, being able to have those conversations with people that will then get up to the right levels that you need as well, whether it's within private industry or government. All of those is just, puts together a really supportive environment here.
Lasha, thank you for doing that. I could keep prodding. What about this? What about that? That was a lot of fun. Thank you for playing along. I did not prep you at all that I was going to do that, but I really appreciate you're so well informed and clearly so passionate about the market that you live in. You became my de facto expert around all things Winnipeg. So thank you for that. So I thought maybe we could put you back into your comfort zone, which is like, hey, this is why this place is awesome. Clearly you're all in. And I think that it's hard to sell something you don't believe in. It seems like you clearly believe in it. So I do appreciate that at the level that it is.
Yeah, for sure.
If I want to learn more, and I am curious because that's the whole point of the show is to make people go, huh, I never really considered that before. What's the best? Is it reach out to you? Is it steer me to a website? Where would be my first kind of like, oh, I'm just going to go and kind of surf around and learn a bit more. Where should I go?
Yeah, I think that reach out to me for sure. I'm very accessible on LinkedIn and I will reply to any message that I get. So that's not a problem at all. Economic Development Winnipeg does have a website as well that has all the different sectors that are listed on it, and you can find out, stats, figures, etc. I would say the two other pillars that are here, Manitoba Innovates, like I mentioned, is one of them. Since they are just going over a brand refresh and change, etc., they will be building out their resources. So
Okay.
that would be somewhere I would go in the future. And then North Forge has a plethora of programs as well. So those are the two main ones that I would look at.
Okay, amazing. I appreciate that. I hope the audience is curious enough. I'm sure there'll be some of your local audience will listen, but some of my audience here will listen just out of curiosity. I tend to have an audience that is widely curious. So thank you for coming on. Thanks for reaching out to me as you did and how we met by going, hey, I loved your thing, but I got a few things I want to correct. So I'm glad we had a platform and an opportunity here to kind of to share the story. And I think we're too small of a country to not be in it together. So I think having respect and understanding of our different markets is really, really, really important. We're way too small to be isolationist thinking, for, like you said, interprovincially. The imaginary dotted line sometimes is it's too darkly written on the map. I think we can erase some of that. That's my personal view.
Yeah,
Anyways.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
My pleasure. Lasha, it was really nice meeting you.
Thanks, you too.